pastor. His name is Carl Lentz. And I'm so blessed by this one story. That's why I want to share it again. And he's the head of this pastor in New York. And every time the service is about to start, what he does is he goes outside because there's a line, and he greets each person in the line. He says, "Oh, hi, how are you? Welcome to our church. Hi, how are you? Welcome to our church." And he saw this one person on the side, and he looked like a homeless man. He was seated there, he had alcohol in his hand, and so he reached down and said, "Oh, are you joining our service?" And the guy didn't even know there was a church there. So tinanong niya parang, "Why are you here? Are you joining our church or something?" He said, "Hindi, I'm just here kasi yung church nila, it's inside the club kasi mas mura pag Sunday." So he said, "You know what? Since you're here already, why don't you join us? We have a church inside that club and you are welcome to join us." And sabi ng homeless guy, "No, I don't belong there. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a homeless guy. I'm weird. The church people will find me weird there also." And the pastor sat down next to him and said, "No, it's okay. You know why? Because our pastor there, he's weird also. So you're gonna fit just right in." And the homeless guy, ayaw talaga. Hello? And the homeless guy really didn't want to go. So he said, "O sige, if I buy you a beer," kasi the guy said, "This beer in my hand, paubos na. Kapag wala akong beer, maghahanap ulit ako ng bago." So he said, "If I buy you a beer, will you come to church?" He said, "Okay, if you buy me a beer, I'll sit in front of your church pa." So he brought him to the front of his church and said, "I'm gonna give you a beer, just one condition. You listen to the message to the pastor who's going to speak." Yun pala, that guy was the pastor. So he walked up to the stage and greeted everyone and greeted this one homeless man who was an alcoholic. And he was drinking his beer, and what changed his life was not the message they preached in the stage. It was what the pastor was willing to do just to reach out to this one person. The next day, this elderly woman walked up to the pastor and said, "Carl Lentz, I'm done. I'm done going to your church. You've sold out. Ayoko na dito." And he said, "Wait, why? What happened? Ano ba nangyari?" And she said, "I saw you bring in a homeless guy in church. And I saw him drinking alcohol. In fact, ikaw pa nagbigay ng alcohol. So I'm done going to this church. This church is fake. Ayoko na." And he said, "No, but that's how I invited him. Why are you trying to be so against it?" And so the woman said, "Because I could see his sin." And he said, "But I can smell your pride. Because at the end of the day, who are we to choose who can come to church and who can't come to church? Who are we to say who deserves God's love and who doesn't deserve God's love?" And so I'm actually happy na konti lang tayo today. You know why? Because our theme for this month is there are more souls. So what better time to preach this than when we are so little? Because there's so much of us outside this place who need God, but they just don't realize it yet. And so I'm going to start, and my message is called Stop Hating. Kasi ang daming haters in this world. I don't know, there's this thing I saw in Facebook where it said, sometimes the person filled with tattoos is the most genuine person you'll ever meet. And the old woman who's dressed in her Sunday dress and goes to church every Sunday is the most judgmental person you're going to meet. And you know what? It's true. Sometimes that is the case. Sometimes there are people who go to church just for the sake of going to church, pero sila pala yung judgmental. I'm trying so hard to speak Taglish, by the way, so forgive me. But now I'm going to share you two stories. It's about Jonah. I don't know if you know Jonah. And about Jesus. And so I want to start with Jonah. Ganda ng picture, no? Inedit ko yun kanina. Jonah is a prophet. So I don't know if you've read the book of Jonah, but Jonah was this prophet who was serving God. And one day God spoke to Jonah and he said, "You know what? I want you to go out of your comfort zone and you go to that place called Nineveh." So for those of you who don't know what Nineveh is kasi is the capital of Assyria. And the Assyrians, this country, was known to be the most violent country in the whole world at that time. You can research about them. Assyrians, they would rape women, they would murder children, they would burn men alive. And usually the people they would do this to were the Jews. And so when God reached out to Jonah and said, "I want you to go over there and I want you to prophesy to Assyria in Nineveh." And Jonah heard it and said, ayoko. There's no way I'm going to that place. You know why? Because that place, the people there, they deserve to die. They deserve to suffer. They deserve to pay for everything they've done to my family and everything they've done to my country. And so they were arguing back and forth, and he really didn't want to go. So if you know the rest of the story, Jonah just chose not to go na lang. He left God, and God somehow caused Jonah to go back to the place. And I want to read you a really quick verse. Shucks ko, you took out the verse. Let me look for it. I'm just gonna make it kwento. Parang memorize ko eh. And basically, the kwento was, Jonah told God, see, the reason why I ran away is because I know who you are. I know you're a good God. I know you're a loving God. I know you're a merciful God. And I don't want the people from Nineveh to experience that. Because I know if I go there and I preach to them, they're going to say sorry and they're going to repent, and I know you're going to accept them back. And the last thing I want you to do is to accept these people. So I'd rather you kill me now than I go there to reach out to them. And so he was trying to explain to God that so many reasons, like they're haters and they kill people and they murder and they rape. And God said, but I still love them. See, it doesn't matter how sinful they are or how sinful you are. Neither of you deserve my love anyway, but I still choose to give it to you. See, the thing about God, the thing about Him is you can never out-sin His love. Your sins are great, but His love is greater. And that's what He was telling Jonah. That I love you just as much as I love these people who you hate so much. But Jonah couldn't understand it. But long story short, Jonah still preached. Now that's the first story. Don't forget it. The second story is about Jesus. So it's Jonah and Jesus. And the story really revolves around this man named Zacchaeus. I don't know if you know Zacchaeus. This is Zach. But the story is Jesus was walking into this place called Jordan. And so he was walking and everything. And this man, Zacchaeus, he's a very short man. So when he was trying to look, who's this guy Jesus? Like, why is everyone going here? He couldn't see kasi ang daming matatangkad eh. So what he did was, he climbed this tree, it's called the sycamore tree, and he climbed the tree just so he can see Jesus. One thing you need to realize is, in the Jewish country at that time, the worst people to them were tax collectors. Kasi tax collectors, they would steal your taxes and they worked for the Romans. So to the Jews, to be a tax collector was the worst sin you could ever commit. And this guy, Zacchaeus, was the chief of tax collectors. He was the head of tax collectors. So to the Jews, he was one of the worst people in the whole country. And Jesus was walking and he noticed this guy climbing a tree and he said, Zacchaeus, come down immediately because we have to talk. And I want to go to your house. And so Zacchaeus was so happy. He was so glad. He ran down and said, oh, sure, I'd love to have you at my place. And it said in the Bible that when Jesus spoke to this sinner, everyone there murmured. Meaning they were whispering. And they were saying, what? I can't believe Jesus would talk to this guy. I can't believe Jesus would invite himself to a place like that with people like that. And they were all judging Jesus and they were all talking about him. And so Jesus went to his place anyway. And it said in the Bible that Zacchaeus was so touched by Jesus' love. He said, you know what? If I cheated anyone, I'll pay them 4 times the price I stole from them. And I'm going to give half of my riches back to the poor. And Jesus said, you know what? Something good happened in this day because I was able to touch a life. See, the thing about Jesus, as opposed to Jonah, is the type of love he has. Usually dito sa church, if you notice, including ourselves, including me, even me before, tayong una nagja-judge. We're the first ones, we don't even know their story, but we just look at them and we see their tattoos, we see their short skirts, we can smell the alcohol in their breath, and he looks like he attends some rock concert or something, and we judge them right away. But Jesus never did that. I mean, so many people claim they follow Jesus, but if you really follow Jesus, you'd be more like him and less like Jonah. Something in there was this post that said, Jesus' love is a scandalous love. Why? Because Jesus was so scandalous. He would talk to the very people that that everyone in society did not want to talk to. Why? Because he said, I'm here for the lost. I'm not here for the saved. I'm here for the broken. I'm not here for the people who are already whole. And the reason why I was so blessed by that story is because it showed me how far Jesus was willing to go. It didn't matter what people would say about him. It didn't matter what society thought of him. He knew what he was doing was right. And so you can judge me. I'm going to talk to this prostitute anyway. You can judge me. I'm going to go to this bar to talk to my friend who's an alcoholic because he needs me anyway. And it didn't matter what the church thought. It didn't matter what his followers thought. He did what was right. And so there's this really nice verse I wanted to show you guys. How far are you willing to go for the people you love? And there's this thing I want to show you guys. See, the reason why it's so easy for me now to go out of my way to talk to people, the reason why it's so easy for me now to talk to those who are alcoholics and drug addicts and people who have been raped or have gone through depression, is because I'm no better than them, and I know it. The reason why I can see no one in this place, no one in church, no one in my family can ever expose my sins and my flaws and my shortcomings as much as I have. I've been drinking so much alcohol, other people can't drink as much alcohol as I did. Especially, I don't know, people in church, I guess. I've taken drugs so many times, I couldn't recall how many times I was sober in college. I've been playing around with so many women, I didn't understand anymore what it meant to be loyal. And the reason I tell you that is not because I'm trying to shame myself, but because how God changed me and how God transformed me, I can't help but show other people. See, most people think that because you're bad and because you're sinful, God will never love you. And like what I said kanina, your sins are great, but His love is greater. And in this one verse, it says, "For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God." See, if you really think about it, like I'm just going to use me as an example. I'm the victim of the way I was raised, not by my parents, not just by my family, but by society. In the schools I went, whether it was La Salle or my Barkada or Enderon, it doesn't matter. The way I think is a product of how I was raised. You know, all the drugs and all the alcohol and all the women. I wasn't born that way. I mean, not too long ago, I was some young fat kid who enjoyed eating and enjoyed praising God and enjoyed talking to my family. And one day I was so broken and so hurt. But the truth is, we all start out as this young little kid who's so innocent and has no fear in the world. And all they know is about Jesus and about God, and they follow their parents. Look at Don. Guwapo mo, Don. And so, it's your sister. And so, that's how we all start out. That's Zed. That's Noel and Kuya Arnold. And that's Fat Troy. And that's Thea and Bora. And Al. And Sam. So we all start out that way. We have so many enemies in this world, diba? I mean, who here can honestly raise up your hand and say you don't have a single enemy? Wala kayong kaaway. Oh, kala ko you're gonna raise your hand. Kapal. Joke lang. But I've experienced this, na I have an enemy na kaaway ko, and everything in my mind, it's like, I don't want him to know Jesus. I don't want him to have a good life because he hurt me so bad or she hurt me so bad. And I was living a life closer to Jonah than to Jesus. But if you think about it, everyone started out this way once, where they were innocent and loving and caring, but they became the victim of the evil and corruption of this world. And so my question to you guys really is, now that you've received Jesus, for those of you who have received Jesus, what are you doing about it to share to these people? There's this other verse when Jesus was in this place and he visited this demon-possessed guy. He asked, "What's your name?" And he said, we are legion, for there are many of us. Because there were so many demons inside this one guy. And Jesus casted out each and every demon. And you know what he said? He said, now, go home and tell them what I did for you. See, so many of us go to Jesus just for what we can get out of them. And the moment he says, go and tell others what I did for you, all of a sudden it's like, that wasn't part of the contract. I don't want to do that part. But the whole theme of this month is there are more souls. The reason why it's so easy for me to share, honestly, to my friends, to my family members who aren't Christian, it's not because I'm afraid of them to receive all the suffering and punishments of this world, whatever it may be. But because I've experienced the type of love from Jesus that I never experienced before, because I kept rejecting him. And I know that some of you guys here can honestly say that you've experienced Jesus' love. And if you really love your friends, if you really love your dad and your mom and your sister and your brother, why aren't you trying to reach out to them? See, most people think that Jesus is just going to show up by himself into your house and go to your mom. Kunyari, it's your mom you're trying to pray for. He's going to appear to your mom and say, I'm God and I'm real and follow me. But that's not the case. 9 times out of 10, Jesus shows himself to your family through you. It's not about Jesus showing up by himself. It's about him showing himself through you. Now, the question is, are you making yourself available so that Jesus can touch your family? In the Bible, we all know someone was wearing a shirt. It said, salt and light. The light part. The thing I like about light is that the darker it is, the brighter the light will shine. That's why Jesus called himself light. That's why he told us that we're supposed to be the light of the world. Because in darkness, it doesn't matter how dark it gets. If there's even one small amount of light, you'll see it. And so we're all called to be that one small amount of light. And one day, more and more people will follow. Like, I can't say my family, but for example, like with Al, for example. Before, she wasn't a believer. And then she started going to church. And then one day, through her family got touched, and so her dad is going to church in Cebu. And then now her brother is going to church with us in Manila. And now the brother's girlfriend, is going to church also. And it started with just one person. Because that's all God needs. It doesn't matter how broken you are, how lost you are. See, if you don't know the Bible, you won't know this. But if you read the Bible, every single character in the Bible, whether it's Peter, Paul, James, John, if you look at their history, they're all, in many cases, bad people. In fact, if you were to invite each and every apostle to church today, before they knew Jesus, church members would probably cast them away. You know why? Because some of them were murderers. Some of them were drunkards. Some of them were drug addicts. Peter, Troy, was it Peter or Paul? I forgot. Shucks, pressure, my dad's watching. Was it Peter or Paul, the one who would murder? Paul, see, I knew that. Paul, before he knew Jesus, was a murderer, whether you know it or not. He hated the Christians so much that he would go out of his way to murder Christians until one day God blinded him, and the only way he received his sight back was through a prophet. And then that's when he gave his life. If God can accept a murderer who murdered his people, how much more you?